Welcome to the Fintech Times News and Views podcast. Established in 2016, the Fintech Times is a global multimedia news outlet centered around the world's first leading fintech newspaper. We report on the latest and brightest ideas from the fintech world. Follow the conversation using hashtag TFD News and Views and follow us at the Fintech Times. Hello, and welcome back to the Fintech Times News and Views podcast brought to you by Vanta. Vanta helps you save time, money, and build customer trust, all by centralizing program requirements and evidence collections for frameworks like Dora. If you want to manage risk and prove security, then head to vanta.com/fintechtimes to learn more. But anyway, guys, it is a glorious spring has finally come. I'm here as ever with Tom and Francis. How are you guys doing this week with this glorious sunshine and lovely weather that we're having?
Oh, I'm absolutely loving the weather. It's been really nice. It's a nice change to be able to go out in a t-shirt and not be absolutely dying. So that's been a nice day. I even went outside, ate lunch at the park yesterday, which is
lunch out. How decadent! How decadent!
I've been dreaming of that for the last 6-7 months. So that was nice. But I mean, on the fintech side, it's a bit of an odd week actually. I feel like it started off quite strong, and then we always record these podcasts on a Friday. But Thursday and Friday this week have been very, very slow news days, very weak. So we've been just trying to find the odd bits and pieces to cover. But yes, other than that, it's been a good week.
Awesome stuff. And Francis, how about you? How are you doing?
Yeah, very well, very well. It's interesting now that the sun is starting to come out, because I moved house at the start of the year, or not the start of the year, at the end of last year. And obviously that was in sort of the winter time, and it was all getting excited about the idea of having like a nice sunny garden. But it turns out no sun gets in our garden whatsoever. So we have one little corner which we put a chair in, and then that's like the sunshine corner, and that's about it. But no, other than that, doing very well. As Tom said, it started off quite busy, but it has sort of slowed down a little bit. But nonetheless, I think we have some really interesting topics to talk about today, and looking forward to getting into the conversation.
Absolutely. And I feel your pain, because my garden, you get maybe like an hour of sunshine when like the sun hits right and isn't shaded by the other buildings. So, but that hour of sunshine happens at like 9 o'clock in the morning, and then that's it. So I completely feel your pain on that front. But yeah, always fun to talk about fintech, of course. So guys, what have you brought with us today? Tom, what are you going to be talking about?
Yeah, so one of the articles that caught my eye this week was about a new study about customer confidence in the UK about real-time payments.
Awesome stuff. And Francis, how about you?
My article this week is about the recent letter to the UK government written by players in the digital asset industry calling for greater attention to the development of blockchain technology.
Fantastic. And I'm going to be talking about how fraudsters are turning to WhatsApp, with UK consumers falling for WhatsApp scams more than any other country. So kind of a UK focus today. This doesn't happen very often. A few different kind of areas. But anyway, Tom, I will let you go first. Take it away.
Sure thing. So yeah, as I said, the global analytics software leader FICO recently conducted a survey which found that 3/4 of consumers in the UK say they have sent and received real-time payments. However, around a quarter, 23%, say they don't know if real-time payment processes include enough security checks. Now, as part of this survey, FICO also found that UK usage of real-time payments is far lower than the global average. While 79% of UK consumers have sent real-time payments, and 73% have received them. This is compared to 91% and 89% averages for the other 14 countries surveyed. And I just thought that showed a real disparity between, the different countries. And obviously my initial reaction was, 79% of UK consumers have sent these real-time payments. That seems like quite a lot, but compared to the other countries, it turns out that we're actually lagging quite far behind. Now, meanwhile, just 16% of respondents have sent real-time payments from a business to a person, compared to the global average of 31%. So again, we're quite far behind in that respect. Now, in response to these findings, FICO basically says that we need more education in the UK around the benefits of real-time payments and how they counterbalance fraud checks and regulatory changes. And it also says that this represents an opportunity for banks to communicate risks and warnings to their customers while providing a strong scam defense. And the reason I find this article interesting is because I feel like it comes back to something that we always talk about on the podcast, which is the need for better financial education in the UK. And I think this kind of points to the idea that maybe we don't just need to be teaching people the basics about budgeting or how to avoid scams online, but maybe we need to be increasing education on sort of more niche topics, I guess, and more complex subjects, and teach them about actually how the payments infrastructure works in the UK, to make sure people actually understand it, to make sure they're not putting their trust in actually what is less secure methods of sending money just because that's what they're most used to. So that's what I really wanted to get both of your take on this. I want to know if you guys think it's actually worth trying to improve education about more complex things like real-time payments, or do you think for the time being it'd be more worthwhile to double down on, you know, the more core financial topics that we always talk about as still kind of lagging behind in terms of what you'd expect to see across the UK? You know, so that's what I really want to ask you. Is it something that we should be focusing on now, or should we leave it for when these sort of core financial topics are understood better first? Polly, what do you think?
I think that's a really interesting question. I think there's a lot. I know, like you say, we do talk about financial education a lot on the podcast. I think it's very the way that you've posed that in terms of like, do we teach everyone sort of like the core basics first and then move on to the sort of more advanced stuff, I think is a really interesting take. And I do wonder where you'd start to see the most benefits. But I guess for me, I think realistically, you've kind of just got to be teaching everything. Like financial education, you have to get everything across and just hope that some of it sticks. Because I think there's, in a lot of ways, there's quite a lot of people out there who already know the basics. Like if we're being honest, like there's a lot of people out there who already kind of know they're managing their finances just fine. They know what they're doing. Yeah, they're not experts maybe, but they're trundling on just fine. So maybe those are the people that we want to be targeting for kind of the more, you know, the newer aspects. And I think when it comes to real-time payments specifically, I think if they want it to grow and have that adoption to grow as much as I'm sure quite a lot of people are planning for it to do, I think there is an element there of no, you have to start kind of communicating about it now, because I don't think people are always really reluctant to change, I've found in my experience, and changing something or trying something new for just sort of the average person can be quite a challenge. So if you want them to start using this fancy new payment option that is, you know, has all the benefits that it does, I think you need to start teaching them about it now so that it starts to become commonplace, you know, like it starts to become kind of like a household name. Like it's just another, it's like, oh, credit cards, Apple Pay, real-time payments, like that. It just kind of comes under the same umbrella, which it doesn't yet. Because if I think about the people in my life, I don't think, if I asked anyone, like my husband, my friends, my family, if I asked them what a real-time payment was, I don't think they'd be able to tell me, or I don't think they'd be able to say that they'd heard of it before. So I think, yeah, in this case, I think you need to start pushing it now. And I think especially if you kind of want to see that increased rate of adoption, you really need to start explaining to your consumers why should they be using it? Because as I said, you know, change is hard. And I think we've seen that time and time again in the finance industry. But then we've also seen when it switches, we see something be very new and people be very wary of it. And then suddenly it is commonplace. Like I think buy now, pay later is probably a really good example of that. It was very new, a lot of wariness about it. And now it's just a thing. So I think that can happen here as well. And I expect it will happen here, but you've got to get the financial education in early. And I think that's something we kind of always say, right, just get it in early and it'll be less of a problem down the line.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I like exactly kind of where you do in that sense as well. I think I completely agree with what you're saying. And I like the point you made actually that, you know, the vast majority of people that if we spoke to now actually wouldn't know. If you said to them, oh, do you use real-time payments? They wouldn't know. They would probably say no, just because they're like, well, what is it? I don't know what that is. But obviously we have the faster payment system in the UK, which is the real-time payment system here. And it's used, you know, whenever you send money from one bank account to another. And I think that kind of knowledge of people actually aren't sure what it is. And maybe that's why there's a little lack of confidence in it, is even though they're using it on a daily basis, they just have no idea they're using it on a daily basis. So then when they're surveyed about how much you're using real-time payments, people actually just aren't aware that how much they're using it in the first place. And I wonder if that's something that has impacted the kind of findings of the study. And I also think, we've obviously had quite a lot of high profile outages in the UK recently, obviously bank accounts and stuff, but we also had, I think towards the back end of last year, we had the CHAP system go down, which is obviously what a lot of sort of house payments go through when you're trying to buy a house. That's where the money goes through. And a lot of people struggled with that for a couple of days last year. And I wonder if that kind of people just group them together, like, oh, this payment infrastructure has gone down, therefore I don't trust all payment infrastructures. I don't know. I think that's something that could be impacting it as well. But Francis, I want to get your take. What kind of side of the spectrum do you lie on this? Are you thinking this is something that people need to know about immediately, or is it a bit less important to you?
I think as the world sort of becomes more digitally aware, and sort of, I think what we need to understand is that there isn't ever going to be a time where we can go back to now where, real-time payments weren't a major part of our lives. And in the sense of that, we need as much education as possible. Like you both said, like education is at the core of sort of understanding the financial system as it is right now and as it will continue to be as it grows. But they need to be able to match whatever the capabilities of the time are. So like in this instance, in the UK, like real-time payments, and as you said, like the faster payment system, I think, people need to be understanding how that works and, what it is. And I mean, when I say how it works, not the ins and outs of it, but just understanding that, what is a real-time payment. But I don't, sort of harking back to what you said at the start, I don't think you can really abandon the core financial topics in place of real-time payments. Like when people are younger and they're learning about it, I think the core, parts of the financial ecosystem, lending or, budgeting, those sort of things that, we always talk about as being the main parts of financial education, I think they need to sort of remain, but we need to continue to build on them and like integrate a way of, saying this is where real-time payments now fit into it. And, this is potentially where crypto will fit into it when that happens. Or, this is where, the next big thing will fit into it. So I think core financial topics always need to be at the heart of the conversation. But in terms of like the development of real-time payments, there needs to be, in short, yes, there needs to be more education around it. And, that will only continue to evolve, and it needs to sort of cement itself now in the education, like sort of roadmap, I suppose. And then as it continues to grow and as organizations do continue to build on and new innovations are launched, then the education that is needed to match and use those platforms, it will be easy to integrate that into the system and sort of the knowledge cycle, if you will. But yeah, I think ultimately, just in answer to your original question before was, core financial topics, they always need to be at the heart of everything. And I don't think we can really just replace them just because real-time payments are sort of booming right now. And yeah, so I think it's just a matter of integration rather than replacement.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it's another just case where we just really need to see more avenues for all financial education. And like you said, really doubling down on those core topics is important. But yeah, expanding that is equally important because, we know better than anyone that just the speed at which things evolve and things change. And, it's important that people are aware of these changes and the new systems that are in place and the new kind of infrastructure that, they are dealing with on a daily basis. But yeah, I think we've wrapped it up very nicely, guys. And obviously we're talking about consumer confidence. So why don't we go over to yours, Polly? Because yours is quite nicely linked.
Yeah, absolutely. Love the little segue. So my article is all about how fraudsters are turning to WhatsApp, with new research from Revolut revealing that UK consumers are losing £2,437 on average from scams originating on WhatsApp. Sorry, I couldn't read that number then. But anyway, yeah, so basically, WhatsApp, I think we all know that WhatsApp kind of prides itself on security, and it makes a big deal about how it has encrypted messages and it's like quite a secure platform. However, this new research from Revolut has found that UK consumers are losing money from scams originating on the platform, and that British people are the most vulnerable to WhatsApp fraud and are ranking the worst affected in Europe in 2024. So the rising number of WhatsApp scam cases is likely showing a misconception among consumers, with encrypted messaging platforms like WhatsApp, though private, offer very little protection against fraud and are actually actively being targeted by criminals. So Revolut has done this research for its third consumer security and financial crime report, basically which looks at fraudsters across markets. And it's highlighted basically that meta platforms remain the biggest source of all scams globally, taking 58% in 2024. So I think this is just a really interesting one that I kind of want to touch on today, because I guess it's something that can be very relatable, right? I think a lot of the time we talk about fraud in a lot of big ways. But when it comes to sort of like a WhatsApp scam or something like that, that's something that I think is a bit more realistic and something that we can relate to a little bit more. Like, maybe we know someone it's happened to, maybe it's happened to ourselves, kind of thing. And I guess there is a lot of ways that people take security for granted in a lot of scenarios when it comes to, their financial security and things like that. And I wonder if people don't really think about WhatsApp being a potential place where fraudsters can be active. So yeah, it's really interesting. And I think Revolut's analysis of fraud data across the European market showed that the UK leads Europe in WhatsApp scams, with the highest number of WhatsApp scam cases per 1,000 customers in Europe in 2024. And it also found that fraudsters are increasingly target WhatsApp users, moving away from other platforms. So Facebook scams have fallen by 31% from H1 to H2 in 2024, while Instagram scams increased by 16% during the same period. So I think it's just very interesting to see kind of what kind of scams these people are falling to. Job and investment scams are some of the big ones. And I guess it's just a case of consumers just letting their guard down to messages received on WhatsApp more than any other platform, and ultimately falling for the fraudster's trap. So I really just wanted to talk about this today with you guys and kind of see what you thought about the whole thing. Does more need to be done in order to kind of combat this? I know Revolut in the article has sort of called out their actions for change. So some of the things that they've demanded are, social media companies committing to sharing the reimbursement for victims of scams originating on their platforms, rather than letting the financial institutions left to fight the fraud. They're also calling for more customer education and increased public awareness about the risks of WhatsApp scams, as well as proactive intervention, not reactive measures. So, more stringent verification processes, etc. So yeah, I just wanted to bring you guys in and get your take on this whole thing. Is this just, is a WhatsApp scam just another thing we all have to be really hyper vigilant about, or, can something more be done? I guess, Francis, I'll go to you first.
Yeah, I think more definitely needs to be done by sort of these social media sort of communications platforms. I think the idea of better verification especially sort of sticks out to me, because I think it's all well and good, WhatsApp claiming that it's got one of the best security measures and like all its encryption and so on. But if you're going to only be encrypting sort of criminal messages, then it almost sort of defeats the purpose of it. And I think these platforms, again, sort of, it's all well and good saying, we have all this security, but if anyone can access the platform, then that security is almost sort of, the privacy aspect is there, but it's just anyone can talk to anyone. And it almost sort of goes back to, just it sounds silly, but it's almost like stranger danger. It's like this idea of like anyone can access it, and you really need to be so aware, because the amount of times as well that, I know this is potentially one of them. I know it's this, they talk about in the article, it is job and investment scams, but the amount of times that you get like people impersonating family as well, and they somehow get the images or of your family or friends, and then they message you, and then they how they get your number and how they know who is beyond me, but it is frightening. And I think that's where the verification from these platforms and the responsibility really needs to be taken to sort of say, well, there is this huge financial risk. But again, like the article says, rather than being reactive and waiting for for something to happen before taking action. Just get in the way now, put some verification in place, and stop potential victims even being exposed to the situation in the first place. And it takes the onus off the customers a little bit and having to be aware, which I guess you could argue is a bad thing, because you don't want them to get complacent and think that, you know, everything's always going to be safe all the time. But I do think it is I think more needs to be done. And I do like the idea, like Revolut say, that it's not just on the financial institutions, and that, you know, these platforms which are enabling these conversations to take place, these quite literally giving fraudsters a platform to work with, they need to take a little bit more responsibility too.
Yeah, 100%. I completely agree. And I like what you said about the family scams, because that is something that does like terrify me. From the point of sort of like my parents and my grandparents, we have had to sit them down a few times. I think my mum actually got one a while ago. This is a few years ago now, claiming to be her daughter. Didn't say who, and then we had to be like, no, mother, we wouldn't do this, we wouldn't ask for money on WhatsApp, blah 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 blah. So yeah, that one does scare me. But I mean, like, Tom, what do you think about this whole thing? Do you agree with what Francis is saying?
Yeah, I definitely do, and I think I completely agree to him. So I don't have much more to add other than the fact that kind of reiterate what he was saying, and that I do think greater verification, if you're setting up an account in a certain way, is required. Obviously, you know, that's not a necessarily easy thing to implement, but, you know, I think back to, you know, when I ordered my sofa a couple of months ago, and when it was coming, they were like, oh, the only way to contact us is through WhatsApp. And so I was messaging them on WhatsApp, and I was like, oh, it's just a mobile number, and the profile picture is their logo. I was like, anyone could have set this up. And I'm like, there's no like way that I can tell this is actually the official people, other than the fact that in the email, this is the number they've given me. But it's so easy to see that even like official companies that are set up on there and use it as an official channel to communicate with customers, it's like quite sometimes, even when they are the ones that are giving you the number and say message us, like, it's still not always clear, like, oh, is this definitely the right one? And I think it'd be very easy for it to happen the other way around, and for, you know, someone to pose as a certain company or something like that, or individual, and it's so easy just to put a picture on, you know, that's a logo or that person's face, and it's just a mobile number that's not attached to anything else. You say, well, you know, there's nothing to say that it is them, but there's nothing to say that it isn't either. And I think that there needs to be, as Francis said, some kind of verification that stops that from happening. And while you don't want it to stop businesses from being able to set it up as easily, I think it's important to make sure that these type of scams are cracked down on, and that you can't just receive a message from anyone claiming to be anyone. And I think that's really important. But yeah, other than that, I think I completely agree with what both of you were saying on the topic.
Yeah, it's one of those things where there's not really that much to say other than, everyone hates fraud, no more scams, please. But I think it's just interesting to see kind of the different aspects of fraud, from like big levels that we talk about sometimes to then, you know, the smaller levels, you know, that can happen as well. But anyway, let's move on. Francis, why don't you finish us off with your article?
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on from the conversation of fraud, I suppose, and turning towards a topic that sort of is, I want to say, almost bringing two together in the realms of blockchain and AI. So recently, the digital assets industry, a bunch of the leaders and players in it, came together and wrote a letter to Varun Chandra, the Prime Minister's Business and Investment Special Advisor. And they were essentially calling for greater development of the blockchain and digital assets sector. And one of the main points that they made, which I will get to in a bit, was this idea that blockchain has, in a way, fallen to the wayside a little bit in development. It's not the talk of the town anymore, and a lot of people just are focusing on artificial intelligence and how AI can be used or is being developed and is being given these roadmaps, and how, you know, the governments are saying, well, this is how it can be used in X, Y, and Z. And I think that while it is important that AI has all this attention, and that, you know, we make sure we get AI right, because, I mean, it is an incredibly important bit of technology, and, you know, it's something that is going to completely change sort of every sector as we know it from now on. The levels of automation that we're going to get from it are going to be second to none to what we've had to this point, really. And because of it's getting so much attention and it is so important, other technologies like blockchain are sort of falling out of the limelight a little bit, and people aren't discussing them as much as they were before, perhaps. So this letter was written to try and bring it back into the limelight and back into the back to the attention of the government. And it was signed by the UK Crypto Asset Business Council, Tech UK, the Global Digital Finance, the Payments Association, Digital Currencies Governance Group, and the Crypto Council for Innovation. And as I said, they sort of requested that the UK government take 4 different approaches to ensuring blockchain's development continues to grow and doesn't sort of become sort of an afterthought. So firstly, the letter calls for a blockchain envoy to oversee governing standards across all industries, across health, finance, you name it, to have one person in charge to overlook and govern it all, because right now there is a little bit of sort of confusion in the different ways that different industries are trying to use the technology. Secondly, it asks for the government to take an approach similar to AI in the sense of giving, the government at the start of the year announced its AI Opportunities Action Plan, I believe it was, and that sort of explained how AI is going to be taken forward. And yeah, essentially the industry is hoping to see a similar sort of plan being taken with blockchain. Thirdly, the letter said that that blockchain and digital assets must be developed in tandem with other technologies, specifically quantum computing and AI. And lastly, it said that a dedicated forum needs to be created for experts to continue to help advise the government on sort of the latest trends and staying ahead of the curve, basically, and ensuring that, the UK can be a blockchain hub globally, that organizations who want to sort of develop in the space, they want to come to the UK. Anyway, I wanted to share this today because I wanted to see what you guys thought about the letter and its purpose, and is it going to be as impactful as they want it to be? But I also wanted to hone in on the point about AI, because would you put blockchain in the same lane as AI? Personally, I think AI's use is in every single sector that that we can think of. That its reach hasn't seemed to have a limit. It seems that every single person at this point knows about it. And that sort of almost happened overnight. I remember at the start, I think it was 2023, wasn't it? When sort of ChatGPT really came onto the scene, and then it genuinely seemed like within a week, everyone knew about it. But there hasn't been anything really with blockchain that has seen that same thing where everyone knows about it. And in that regard, does that mean it's not in the same lane and therefore shouldn't have the same treatment, in the sense that, AI is a bigger priority, or are they on par? That's kind of what I wanted to discuss with you guys. So Tom, I'll go to you first.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question, and I feel like you make a good point when you say that AI is literally, there isn't a subsector or an industry or even a portion really of anything in life or work or in the planet right now that AI can't be implemented in some way, and that's something that you can't be said for blockchain. While blockchain has a really still a very wide spectrum for things it can impact, obviously you've got finance, supply chains, identity. It's something that could have a transformative impact still on the UK. And I think while I wouldn't expect to see the same level of funding and money going towards blockchain in the way that it has gone quickly towards AI, I think it does surprise me that there's been a bit of a slowness in the UK regarding, in the same way other countries have implemented roadmaps, they've implemented plans for blockchain, different initiatives to drive the blockchain sector forward and drive digital assets in the same kind of breath. And I think it's interesting to see that the UK hasn't done that. It's taken more of a backseat. And I wonder if that's strategic or if it's just a case of they haven't had the resources to really go at blockchain in the same way that it has with AI. But yeah, I think it's interesting. I think it would make a lot of sense for the UK government to take note of the letter and to really implement a lot of his suggestions. I think a roadmap and just a really clear plan for what's going to happen in blockchain in the future is really important. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what happens with the letter. And while I don't think it's ever going to see the same levels as AI and the same investment, I do think it's important to have a clear plan and to really drive, a pretty still sizable plan forward for blockchain.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're spot on, really, in the sense of that. Yes, AI is probably going to be a bigger thing than blockchain will be, but that's not to sort of discredit blockchain and diminish sort of the capacity at which it can really sort of revolutionize and change the subsectors in which it can be used. I mean, it is going to be a really, really impactful technology in the future. And again, although it might not be as big as AI, it is going to be here to stay and it is going to continue to be developed upon, and its growth will continue to take place. So I think you're absolutely right that there still needs to be some sort of roadmap in place that the government sort of is aware of, and that I think, especially in terms of developing it, I think that fourth point raised in the letter, having a forum for discussion with industry experts will really help sort of speed that along. But Polly, what do you think?
Yeah, there's not really much that I can think of to add. I think you guys have really summed it up really well. For me, I would say that I think there's definitely value in blockchain and treating blockchain with the sort of same focus as AI. I think, they're two very different things, right? They are two... well, I'm sure there's a lot of crossover in kind of things that they can achieve and places that they can be most useful. They are very different, and I think it would be a shame to choose one over the other. Like, if that is sort of the thing that's happening here, I think, if we want to have kind of this global, competitive, big, lovely blockchain industry, then, things need to happen for it to go ahead. And I think the one thing that you said, Francis, that I just want to touch on is how you mentioned, AI has a really big reach over a lot of industries, a lot of sectors, and a lot of different things. But I think you could argue that blockchain does as well. I don't think blockchain has ever just been a single sector thing. It's, the infrastructure that it provides can be uses, across all sorts of different sectors and across different industries. So I think there's still something there that has an opportunity for blockchain to be useful. I mean, when blockchain was the flavor of the month, however long ago that was, it would be, it'd come up in everything, right? We'd get press releases coming through being like, blockchain used in the housing sector, blah, blah, blah. So I think there's definitely still value here. And I guess at the end of the day, there's always value in developing lots of stuff, right? We want to have a competitive industry. We want to have an industry that works really well for us. Then it makes sense to just be working on as much as we possibly can, not one thing in favor of another, in order to sort of end up with a really rich, vibrant industry that we have a lot of use cases for. There are things that AI can do that blockchain won't be able to do, but then alternatively there are things that blockchain can do that AI won't be able to do. So I think it's all give and take, right? And I think it's just important to use, really look at the potential of blockchain and digital assets for the UK, for the economy, for the financial sector, and just kind of really work from there. So I think this letter's a good thing, and I hope something will come from it. But just, I think everything just needs to keep moving forward, because then how else will we grow?
No, 100%. And I want to clarify that I'm not saying that blockchain can't be used anywhere near as much as AI, because of course it has a lot of use cases in a lot of different industries as well. I was just saying, sort of like, for the average Joe, I suppose, they won't be exposed to blockchain as much as they will be to AI, just because in their day-to-day lives, they probably won't be using the technology. And because they don't have that exposure to it, they think, oh, it doesn't apply to me. And therefore the government thinks, well, what does apply to everyone? And right now it seems that ChatGPT and AI does. But no, I think you're absolutely right. I think that despite that, there is this huge opportunity for blockchain. And I think ultimately we have to remember that they are going to sort of achieve different things. sort of blockchain will be used as a verification and a sort of keeping track of ownership. And AI isn't looking to sort of keep track of ownership. AI is looking to sort of simplify, and automate processes. So in that sort of light, we can't really, or in that sort of way, I should say, they're almost not comparable, and they should be treated as different entities and be given the same amount of treatment as each other, because they are looking to achieve different things. My point was just that the exposure that the general UK populace will have to blockchain probably won't be as high as it will to AI, and therefore I think that's probably why I'm sort of saying that AI is potentially more impactful. But in terms of sort of like behind the scenes, I think that's probably where blockchain will really shine. And like you say, regardless of how much attention AI gets, blockchain does need a roadmap, because it is going to be a technology that will be hugely transformative. And yeah, hopefully the government responds to the letter.
Awesome stuff. Well, I think that does bring us to the end of our discussion today. Thank you so much, guys, for bringing your articles. And if you want to hear anything more about anything we've talked about today, head over to fintechtimes.com, where there's plenty more news and insights over there. But very quickly, let's move on to what I learned this week. So each week we are learning so much new stuff from the fintech world, being on the editorial team. So we thought it'd be fun to share that with our listeners. So Tom, what have you learned this week?
So I don't know if this is a bit of a cop-out, because it's not a fact or a finding, but I learned of a new partnership between TrueLayer, the European payment network, and Papa John's, the famous pizza brand. And they're, through that partnership, going to be introducing Pay by Bank, which is something that I've just been advocating more, to see that sort of go through more popular brands. And obviously it's pizza related, so had to bring it to the table.
Love that very much. Francis, what have you learnt this week?
So this week I learnt that Flutterwave has launched its Send app platform in Ghana to allow people to receive money from abroad directly into their bank accounts. And I thought that was quite cool.
Lovely stuff. And what I've learnt this week is that PXP and PayExpert are enabling UK merchants to accept QR-based payments. And you know how much I love that sort of thing. So yeah, thank you so much, guys, for joining me this week. It has been a pleasure to talk to you as always. And I will catch you on the next one.
See you guys next week.
See you then.
Thanks for listening to the Fintech Times News and Views podcast. Don't miss next week's episode, and continue the conversation using #TFT News and Views, and follow us at the Fintech Times.